I'm quitting Airbnb. No, it's not clickbait. I came up with a different plan for a number of reasons.
Shelby Church is quitting Airbnb, and the reason why could happen to anybody. Things are getting expensive in Joshua Tree, and she's decided to put a property on the long-term rental market. But she may not have to take her property off the short-term rental market. The problem may just solve itself, and the secret lies inside the same reason why she wants to quit. Let's get into it. Welcome back, YouTube world. Let me first say that nothing inside of this video is supposed to be hate or shade against any Airbnb host, including Shelby. But with that said, one primary truth about Airbnb is that anybody could do it. Shelby is a little bit different because she bought her property. It takes money to buy a property. She's done a good job making renovations. The pool looks lovely. Place is a nice place. So in that way, she's not like every single Airbnb host on the planet. She had a little cheddar to play with. But up here, she is like everybody else. She is one of us. She's not special. She is 99% sure that she is going to quit Airbnb because of a new tax imposed in Joshua Tree that'll affect the final price of her property. I took a screen grab of her video, and the increase will roughly affect the final cost to the customer by about 10%. Again, no shade here, but any business that would shutter over a 10% swing in margin is one that's running on razor-thin margins. And she's not the only one who might have to close up shop because the money's just not good enough anymore. There are other hosts that run a very similar model to hers, which is remote hosting through a co-host. She has over a $300 cleaning fee for the house, and her house is not big by any means. That is an expensive cleaning fee. She also pays someone else to run her property, so every reservation that she gets, she has to pay money to someone else. Her margins are thin because her cost structure is inefficient. But let's ask the hypothetical question, which is, what happens if she does not quit Airbnb? How much money will she make? How will things change? What is this 10% going to do to her market? Have you ever heard of the term supply and demand? Do you understand the mechanics of supply and demand? One great example is if you're the only person with a bottle of water at the end of a marathon, how much might those marathon runners pay you for that bottle of water? If they all had to compete for your one bottle, they'd probably pay a markup. Alternatively, let's say you got into the khakis business. You've got a store and you're selling some khakis, and you bought 10,000 pairs of khakis in a town of 500 people, and no one likes khakis. How much might you discount those khakis to get rid of them so you can get your cash back and buy something else that somebody might actually want to buy? You'd give away those khakis in a fire sale because those khakis are affecting your cash flow, your velocity of working capital. You've got no more money to play with until those pants get sold. This example will affect Joshua Tree in 2025. There are already hosts quitting Airbnb left and right. Rising property costs, guests are unmanageable, housekeeping costs are out of control. It's hard to find good people to run your property for you. They fall out of love with the industry and just want to do something different. There's plenty of reasons why people don't want to do Airbnb anymore as hosts, not including Airbnb policy, siding with guests all the time, giving away refunds that guests aren't owed, stuff like that. But now add a new tax that increases your cost by 10%. That could hypothetically affect your revenue just as much, which I don't think is true, but let's use the example. If your property makes $10,000 a month, and now 10% of that goes to tax, you're only making $9,000. And from that $9,000, if your co-host gets paid a lot of money, your mortgage is a lot because mortgages are out of control, housekeepers are a ton, you may not have as much money left. You have exactly $1,000 less left than you used to. I have friends in Dallas who are still profitable on Airbnb, but they're quitting because it's just not worth it anymore. They're making less than they used to, and the psychology of making less money makes people want to quit. But let's look at the reality of this. There's something called inelastic demand or elastic demand. If all of the Airbnbs go up by 10%, and Airbnbs are the only properties that can give you a house with a private pool, maybe a hot tub, and a place for 16 or 12 or whatever friends, then in that case, guests will pay the 10% more because hotels still can't serve the need. Hotels don't provide you that privacy. They don't provide you that much yard space. They don't provide you the eclectic experience that Airbnb can give. And in Joshua Tree, people do like Airbnbs as opposed to hotels. It's just part of the experience. So in that case, guests might just pony up the extra 10%. It could have almost no effect on people's net revenues, which means that Shelby could have the same results in 2025 that she has today. But here's the thing. In that video, she just told us she's 99% sure that she's quitting. She can't be the only one that feels that way, right? With that said, let's look up how many listings are in Joshua Tree for this example. We're going to try to find this data using a website that has a free version, AirDNA. You don't have to pay for them. And voila, Joshua Tree has 1,700 active listings, 67 of which are for sale. Even through the free version of AirDNA, you can access the for sale listings. That's kind of cool. Shelby said she's not going to sell her property. She's going to make it a long-term rental, so you won't find her listing on AirDNA for sale. Sorry, guys. But the point here is there's 1,700 listings, and Shelby's will leave the market. So will others. Now, what happens if out of the 1,700 listings, 10% disappear? because they don't want to pay the 10% tax. Now there's only 1,500 and change. Supply and demand dictates that the ratio between suppliers and buyers governs the price. So if the number of buyers is the same, but the sellers shrink, the price goes up. Not only did we identify a scenario where buyers might just spend the extra 10% anyway, we might find that people quit before they discover that this could be true, which means we lose 10% of the inventory in Joshua Tree, people still pay the extra 10%, and supply drops, meaning Shelby could make even more money, hypothetically. Maybe. Over a year ago, I posted a video outlining how people like this would go out of business. Shelby is a prime example of the representative majority of hosts that are actually just homeowners that pay someone else to run their property. And in this case, they have the highest cost structure, which means they are the first to go out of business. They are also removed from the business model, so they don't know as much as the person running the business. They're not going to be as creative. If you put somebody like Shelby Church versus Alex Hormozi in this industry and prices started to drop and they had to fight for market share, somebody like Alex Hormozi is going to win because they are a seasoned business owner who understands how cash moves, how customers work, how operations work, how to lean out a company where it matters, how to make tough decisions and cut costs. This is what hosts need to do in places like Joshua Tree. They have to put their pride aside. They have to fire their co-hosts and run their businesses themselves. And by doing so, they will learn all about how their business actually works, what customers care about, what they don't care about, what makes money and what loses money, and they can start making smart cuts to the business. They can start optimizing their prices, and they can make more money on the back end because not only did they save money firing their co-host, that person's probably keeping 20% of their revenue anyway, but now they can better fit their product for their market because they're not listening to some third party that doesn't actually care. Co-hosts, they're too busy maximizing how many properties that they can run. They're all on the red line right now. There are not many companies that are professional co-hosts in the way that you would expect them to be. They're people like me who've had properties. I know how to run an Airbnb, so I could co-host, but does that make me the best option for that property? Maybe not. And you take someone like myself or another co-host who's got the same 24 hours in a day as everybody else, and you allow them to pick up more and more and more properties until they hit the limit of their own ability, and then you make the industry hard, they're going to be upside down. A lot of Airbnb owners are not dealing with a hard market per se. They're dealing with the fact that their co-host doesn't know how to survive the hard market. And I don't personally know her co-host, so I'm not going to do an updated video on whether or not her listing is doing well for XYZ reasons. We did that video before. I'm just going to assume that her co-host is the same as the one before and thus just as average as always. I hope for her that people prefer Airbnb so much that they still go to Airbnbs instead of hotels, even though there's this tax. I hope that Airbnb makes a marketing campaign saying that they are giving money to build housing for poor people. And I hope that Airbnb uses that. I hope that other Airbnb hosts quit and that Shelby not only gets to stick around making the same amount of money as she used to, but she might even make a little bit more. Because after all, she is a hell of a nice person and she deserves it. Now more than ever, the video that I made about how everyone's going to go out of business is hyper relevant. You should watch that video next if you want to understand how this industry works and how it's going to fall apart for some hosts. There's probably an opportunity for you in there. So watch it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.
Hey!